Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hello. If you're returning, welcome back. Thank you for being here. My name is Allie. Today is probably going to be kind of a long video. I have been out sick, recovering for a couple months, so I missed my June wrap up, and it is now the end of July, so it's time for my July wrap up. So this is June and July in one video, which is a total of 22 books over the past 2 months. I'm gonna explain all of these books as shortly as I can so that this video isn't an hour long. So let's just jump right into it, I guess. The first book that I read in June was When in Rome by Sarah Adams. I gave this 3 stars. I ended up reading Practice Makes Perfect, which was actually the second book to this series. It's a companion novel, so obviously you can read it out of order because I did, but this was the first book. So the first book follows Amelia, who is a pop star, kind of has like a mental breakdown over the stress of everything and just kind of like goes off and drives, and she breaks down in this small town and meets this small town guy that expects her to be prissy and mean. So it's kind of a classic Grumpy Sunshine, do you not know that they're famous romance book. It was cute. I liked the second one better. I believe I 4-starred Practice Makes Perfect. I liked it. It wasn't anything new or exciting, so I 3-starred it. It was a romance book. I feel like I've read some like it before. It wasn't anything new or exciting. So then I read 2 books that have been on my TBR forever. Delia Green Doesn't Care and Ashford Parker Doesn't Fail. Delia Green Doesn't Care, or Delilah. I keep saying Delia, I think it's Delilah. Delilah Green Doesn't Care. 4-starred this book. This is an LGBTQ plus book. So Delilah, she lives in New York, she has a photography business, and her sister, who she hasn't really talked to in a while, reaches out and asks her to be the photographer for her wedding. So she goes back to her hometown that she kind of swore off that she would never go back to again, meets one of her sister's best friends who is a single mom, and they're kind of rivals. I don't know if it's enemies to lovers, but they're like kind of forced proximity with the wedding, but it's a romance between the 2 of them, LGBTQ plus romance. I 4-starred it. I really liked it. I've read a fair amount of LGBT books, but not a lot, and I just thought this storyline was really unique. I think this was the first like single parent LGBT book that I've read. So I liked it. I then read the second one, Ashford Parker Doesn't Fail. This one I 3-starred. It was okay. I liked the first one better. I felt like the characters in this book didn't have as much depth and I couldn't relate to them the same way. So Ashford, she ends up breaking up with her fiance, doesn't get married, and she is like a interior designer contractor person, and she gets kind of a deal with the HGTV and hires this girl Jordan to help her do renovations for this HGTV show. And again, it's kind of a forced proximity. They don't like each other. The house that Ashford is redoing has a bunch of historical value to Jordan and her family. So Jordan and her family don't want her to renovate the house, and Ashford's like, well, I have to. This is my job. It's for my TV show, and yada yada. So like, I liked it. It was still cute. I felt like I connected with the characters in the first book more than I did this one. So then I read a book that I got on a book haul a few months ago. I read Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. This had really high reviews on Goodreads, but I only ended up 3-starring it. This was like almost a 5-star rated book on Goodreads. This is the first Brandon Sanderson book that I've ever read. It's stunning. It's like a gorgeous book. It has beautiful art in it. So like, I wish I liked it more than what it is. I can't put my finger on exactly what it was about this. I don't know if it's his writing style. Like, I kind of, for as small as this book is, I felt like there was almost more filler than what there needed to be. I don't know. There's just something about this I was expecting more of that it didn't give me. So this story follows Tress. She lives on like a island home. She's surrounded by ocean and everything. She's never left her island, and she has a thing about collecting things, specifically cups that sailors bring to her when they go to like the different islands and whatnot. And she falls in love with this boy Charlie, ends up royalty, he's the prince, and he leaves on a trip and he's like, don't worry, I'll be back and I'll bring you the most amazing cup. And he ends up coming back engaged to be married to a princess, and Tress was in love with him. So then Charlie ends up like leaving to go marry this other princess, and Tress has herself convinced that he's like doing this against her will and she's gonna go save him. So she goes on this voyage across all these islands to try and save Charlie. But it's also dangerous because she's never left before, and the oceans are full of pirates and sea monsters and all that. So it's got a lot of different elements going on. I feel like I just didn't like the romance part of it as well. It hasn't turned me off of Brandon Sanderson, but I don't know if I'm gonna jump right back into his other series right away yet. So then next I read City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. It's the first book in the Mortal Instruments series. A while ago, early in the year, I read the Infernal Devices series, and I thrifted almost all of the Mortal Instruments series. Somebody donated almost their entire series at a thrift store, so I bought it. And I haven't read any of them yet. I've had them for like 6 months. So I finally sat down and I read the first one, and I 3-starred it. I didn't like it as much as Infernal Devices. I felt like I was having a harder time with like the setting of it, because Mortal Instruments is like 1700s old England, but I think this is more modern day New York. And I wasn't getting modern day New York. I had a hard time, like, what year is it? I had a harder time with the setting. Mortal Instruments is technically like the first part of the series. I had a hard time kind of figuring out how it connected to Infernal Devices, and it had been so long since I read Infernal Devices, I was kind of just confused about what was going on. I still think I'm gonna keep reading the series. I just really need to spend more time going over what's already happened. But basically the whole kind of Mortal Instruments universe is demon hunters. There is a group of shadow hunters, but they are this secret society that goes out and kills like demons and creatures that have escaped into the human world to cause havoc. And you're not supposed to be a shadow hunter unless you have some sort of magical power. That's kind of the overarching theme of all the different series of this universe, and it's always kind of one person that finds out they have powers. I feel like that's the overarching theme of every series. I don't know, I'm gonna hold out hope that I will still like these. If I don't, at least I didn't buy all the books at full price because I thrifted them. So then on my Kindle, I read Daughter of No Worlds. This book surprised me. I did not think I would like it as much as I did, but I ended up 4-starring it. I thought that this book had a really unique storyline that I haven't read in a while, which is kind of interesting to come across because I've read so many fantasy books that I'm able to be like, oh, this is really similar to this. I don't know if I can think of another series that it can compare to. I feel like it has kind of like the schooling aspect of like the Poppy War. It was not what I was expecting. I was expecting it to be more like Throne of Glass action, but it was a lot more like academic Poppy War kind of vibes. But our main character is Tisana. She is an orphan, doesn't know where she came from, and she really wants to go and find her best friend who she got separated from. That's the only person that she really knows. So she decides that she wants to join the Order, which is kind of like their overarching powerful like government of this society, and they all have like different magical powers. To join the Order and get any of this deciding power, she has to complete an apprenticeship with someone who's already in the Order, who she ends up working for Maxinitrus? They call him Max, but his full name is like Maxinitrus. A random weird name of Max, but he is the grumpy love interest. He does not want an apprentice. He has a weird thing with the Order where he kind of technically left but didn't, so it's a mystery of why he thinks the Order is bad and why he doesn't want Tisana to join it. As Tisana gets more into the government, she's realizing the issues from it, and maybe getting what she wants isn't going to be as easy as she thinks it will. But it's kind of like more of a dark magic academic thing than something super action-packed like Throne of Glass. I think if you're a Sarah J. Maas person, you'll like it, but it's not as action. Like, you're gonna read about her going to school. So if the academic fantasy isn't really your thing, I don't know if this will, but this really surprised me. I was way more interested in it than I thought I was going to be. But on the flip side, my next book, I actually ended up DNFing. I DNF'd Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey. Got literally like maybe 50 pages into this book and got the biggest ick on the planet and put it down and never finished it. There was literally the beginning of one of the chapter was just talking about how the love interest was relieving himself to ideas of her after they had all he did was look at her like never, and it was just the way she wrote it felt very like gross and like demeaning. It did not come off as like smutty. And a lot of people on Goodreads agreed that this book was kind of just icky and gross. So I DNF'd it. I don't recommend it. Yeah, putting this down, I don't want to touch it anymore. Myself off of the disappointment of a DNF. I've been wanting for a while to reread Throne of Glass and go through and like annotate it and like really note what things connected in other books. So I started doing that. I started with Assassin's Blade, reread Assassin's Blade. It's still a 5-star book, but I've just been going through and kind of like annotating and marking like, oh, you know, this section, this was repeated in this book and this connected here. But yeah, I'm slowly gonna start going through this series and rereading it and annotating it and yada yada. But yeah, that was my last book for the month of June. In June, I read 9 books, 1 DNF, 1 5-star, but it was a reread. That was it for June. Not bad. But then that brings us into July. July, I read 16 books. This was my biggest reading month that I think I've had all year. And that was simply because I had surgery and then almost broke my ankle and couldn't do anything. I was out of work for an entire week. I had so much free time. So I got a lot of books read, which is good. So the first book I read was Heart and Seal by Jen Frederick. This has been on my TBR for probably a year, and now I know why. I only 2-starred it. I did not like it as much as I thought it was. There's dust in the air. I did not like it as much as I thought I was going to. This was marketed as like somebody, if you like K-pop, K-dramas, and I love K-dramas, and I love K-pop, so I was like, sick. Cool, this sounds awesome. I read it, it was very mediocre, and I didn't like the ending. Apparently the ending is supposed to set up for like other books, and it wasn't even like it ended on a cliffhanger, it was just a bad ending where like the couple kind of broke up and that was the end of the book. Like, I didn't like the way it ended, and I felt like there was so much filler and stuff that was going on. I feel like I couldn't find the connection between the two of them, so it was just like I wanted to stop reading it. I wanted to DNF it, but I didn't. I made myself read it. Our main character, Hara, she is adopted from Korea to a white family, and she wants to go to Korea to kind of reconnect with her roots because she doesn't have the representation in her life that she wants and really needs. So she's kind of having an identity crisis. So she falls for the, quote, classic K-drama guide called Dark Air, yada yada. They have like a meet cute at the airport, but it kind of turns into like a forbidden love thing, but it doesn't have a good ending. And I get that it's supposed to set up for another book, but like it ended in a way that doesn't make me want to read the next book. That was my first read of the month. I didn't really care for it, so I moved on. So the next book that I read is also one that's been on my TBR forever. I read Wayward by Amelia Hart. This was a book that I got in my book of the month. This book was really interesting. I 4-starred it. I liked it. It's point of view, 3 points of view, dual point of view is 2, points of view. Hi, you don't know this, but I know this. My camera died halfway through recording this, so I'm back to record half of this 20-minute video. So, I was in the middle of talking about Wayward, and my camera died. And just so you know, I finished the whole video. After Wayward, I still have about 12 books. So this is me being annoyed that my camera stopped recording. You don't know that, but I know that. So we're back. And now I have anxiety that my camera is going to die again. But Wayward, 3 points of view. The first character, her storyline is in 2019. The second character is the 1940s, and the third is like the early 1600s. Our first main character, she is leaving an abusive relationship. She takes refuge at a family cottage and is finding out a bunch of like family secrets while she's going through the place. The second character in the 1940s is during World War II, and she is dealing with issues of high society, and it kind of reminds me of like Belle from Beauty and the Beast, where she wants to be educated and people find that weird, and like everybody says that her mom was crazy when she was really just like a modern forward-thinking woman. Third one, the 1600s, our main character is trying to figure out how to not be burned at a stake after being accused of being a witch. I was worried that it was going to be really confusing and just weird, but like I felt like it connected really well, and it's just kind of like 3 different women's stories throughout history of dealing with being a woman. If you're like a cottagecore girly, I think that you'll really like this. I read A Broken Blade by Melissa Blair. This was sent to me by my friend Mikey while I was at home recovering. Thank you, Mikey, for sending me this. I adore you. And I adored this book. I 4-starred it. It was really good. If you are a SJM Throne of Glass person, I think that this would really appeal to you. Our main character, Kira, she is the top assassin to the king. The king has recently changed the rules of the kingdom, and anyone who is a halfling is no longer a citizen. So only people who are fully mortal or fully fey are considered citizens. All halflings become enslaved, or they're mass killed and stuff. Kira doesn't agree with this, but if she goes against the king, he's just gonna kill her. So as much as she doesn't like it, she has to kind of deal with the internal battle of, do I go against the king or do I keep myself safe and continue killing for him? There is then what the citizens have dubbed the Shadow, that is kind of wreaking havoc on the kingdom. He is attacking the castle and destroying supply runs, all of that. So Kira is tasked with taking down and killing whoever, whatever the Shadow is, who ends up being the main love interest. So it is a little bit of an enemies to lovers thing. I really liked it. It wasn't a 5-star, but it was a 4-star, and it was really good, and I highly suggest it. This is the first book. The second book, I believe, is already out, and I have every intention of buying and reading it because I really liked it. Thank you again, Mikey, for sending me this. I appreciate you. I then went through and reread and annotated Throne of Glass, and it's still a 5-star book. Yeah, short, simple, to the point. Next, I read the Selection series. I did a reading blog of this. If you want to check it out, I will link it for you. I go way more into depth in that video of my thoughts, feelings, comments, concerns. So if you want to know more information about how I felt about everything, go check that video out. But in general, this is a YA dystopian series. First 2 books I 4-starred, and the last 3 I 3-starred. Would I loved it more in middle school? Yes. But did I like it for what it was as a 23-year-old? Yes. If you haven't read it yet, or also one of the last people on the planet to read it, I do suggest that you go check it out. I then spent a ton of time on my Kindle. I bought and read Fourth Wing because at that time everybody was obsessed with it, and so was I. I 5-starred it. This is my only 5-star of the past 2 months. If you're worried about it being overhyped and another sort of book talk obsession that isn't really that great, don't be. In my opinion, it is not overhyped. I loved it. I feel I don't read that many fantasy books that are dragon centered. I feel so many of them are just, here's a character that didn't know they had powers, now they do. I feel that's every fantasy book. So I really liked that this was dragon centered. I thought that was unique and something that I haven't read a lot of. Our main character, Violet, she is the daughter of one of the high ranking officers in the military, and her sister is a really high ranked writer. Violet doesn't want to be a writer. She wants to be a scribe. She wants to go and do scribe things and be a historian and things, but her mother is super controlling and refuses to have a child that isn't a writer. So she forces Violet to go to school to become a writer. Schooling, it has all these tests and trials where you're either gonna fail out or you're gonna die. So nobody expects Violet to physically, mentally, emotionally be able to handle schooling to become a writer. There is a little bit of a love triangle. There is a childhood friends to lovers and an enemies to lovers. Obviously, enemies to lovers prevails. It's really good romance, really good smut. I loved the build up between the characters, and I loved the ending, the plot twist, cliffhanger that it left you on. I'm so excited for the second one. If you haven't read it yet, I highly suggest it. I then started reading the Chestnut Springs series. A lot of people also really like that series. It is a companion novel series of 4 books. The 5th book is not out yet. Companion novel series of small town, country, cowboy, westerny stuff. So I read the first book, Heartless, and I 4-starred it. Our main character is a bull rider. He gets into some trouble with the press, so the love interest is sent to be his PR person and just kind of keep his nose out of the dirt and get him back in the good graces of all his sponsors. Very good smut. It has scenes that I legitimately still think about. Don't be weird. It's not weird. It's fine. So I then downloaded the second one, Flawless, and was literally about to read the first page of it. This came in the mail. I bought this book as soon as I finished reading it on Kindle. I reread it immediately and annotated it, and it was still a 5-star book. So I reread Fourth Wing twice within a week of each other. So go read it. It's probably one of my favorite books of the year. So I reread Fourth Wing and then went back to Chestnut Springs and actually read the second book, Flawless, which I also 4-starred. This one is single dad Grumpy Sunshine, which is one of my all-time favorite tropes. I love a grumpy sunshine. I love a single dad. If you added fake dating in it, it would have been my piece de la resistance book. I don't know what it was that didn't make it a 5-star, but it was pretty damn close. I'm not usually like a 4 point whatever, but this is probably like, if I was a 4 point something, this is probably like a 4.75. One of my favorite books of all the series. The third one I 3-starred. It's Childhood Friends to Lovers. I have just never been the biggest friends to lovers person. It's never been a trope that really hits with me. But if you are a friends to lovers person, I really think that you'll like it. Our main characters are an NHL player and a ballerina, and they both have a lot of like family trauma that they used to like bond with as children. So they kind of hold up each other's like deep secrets, and they've obviously been in love for years. And then our main character also leaves her future husband at the altar and runs away. So it's got a little bit of like a forced proximity thing. If you're a friends to lovers person, I really think that you would like it. And then the fourth book, Reckless, I 3-star. That is a pregnancy trope book, which I despise in every way. I normally will immediately DNF any sort of pregnancy trope book. So this one was standable enough for me to finish and like recommend in general. But at times I wasn't the biggest fan of the female character. Like she's supposed to have like a redemption arc, but I don't know if I really felt it that much. And it almost felt a little too insta-lovey. For it being a pregnancy book, it was as good as it was gonna get. I at least finished it. But in general, I recommend the Chestnut Spring series if you're looking for a small town companion novel series. My last book of July, I was doing so well, and then I ended July on just an explosion of disappointment. I DNF'd a book. The last book of the month, I DNF'd done and dusted. I was in kind of the small town romance vibe, and this was some that other people recommended. It was just, I got like maybe 25% in and stopped. It was just too much too fast. I feel like the main characters were hooking up within like the first 5 chapters of the book. It felt like lust. It didn't feel like love, and I couldn't connect to them. So I just couldn't do it, and I DNF'd it. Can I get these all up here? This might be a bad idea. I might hurt myself trying to do this. Also, I checked my camera like through this to make sure it recorded, and it did, but as you will probably notice watching it, the angle was not as good. But I'm not recording this whole section for a 3rd time, so I'm gonna deal with the off-camera angle, and I apologize for it, but I feel like I'm gonna like lose my voice if I try and record that whole section again. But look at this. Here's all the physical books. Oh crap, that was almost really bad. Here's all the physical books that I read in June and July. There's a bunch more, obviously, that I read on Kindle. But yeah, we're all caught up now. Here's all the books that I read in the past 2 months. If you've read any of these, let me know your thoughts and opinions. If I have to recommend you one book and one book only, go read Fourth Wing. It's incredible, for realsies. But yeah, if you want to follow me anywhere on social media, they're all linked down below. Down below is my Pango books. If you want to buy any of these books, you can find them for a cheaper price on Pango. Down below is also my Amazon if you want to be like Mikey and send me a book. I have books already picked out on there, or you can add your own favorites and send me them. Shout out to Mikey for sending me this. I love and appreciate you so much, and I love and appreciate all of you so much. Thank you for being here and spending all this time with me. Please stay safe, and yeah, I will see you guys somewhere else on the internet. Bye. Look, I have to put these all down. I can't get up and shut my camera off. Oh God, this was a bad idea. This is so many. Okay, I can reach my camera now. Goodbye.